Hello, welcome to InSight. I'm Wendy Brokaw. My guest today is Ashley Dunn, Vice President of the Salem-Keizer chapter of the NAACP, the National Organization for the Advancement of Colored People. This chapter is one of the most active in Oregon. It's part of an organization with more than 2,200 units across the nation, powered by more than 2 million people. They see themselves as the legacy of W.E.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, Thurgood Marshall, and other civil rights giants. I like a quote on their website from Du Bois. "Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some more convenient season." Today we talk about Juneteenth, now a national holiday that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved African Americans in the United States. And Ashley, you have activities planned for this particular event here in Salem. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so since Juneteenth has become a national holiday, our chapter here in Salem has commemorated the holiday with a Juneteenth block party each year. We host this event at our headquarters located at 680 Micah. We actually utilize the entire block, so that's actually a street party. We're blocking off the street for community. Oh. And it's really a space where we invite our community to come together. There's food, there's music, there's activities for kids, just a space for us to come and celebrate joy and come together and really begin to kind of heal together as a community. So it's been a really important holiday and event for our chapter, and it's also a very important holiday for Black Americans in general.
Did you think that it would ever become a national holiday?
Personally, I did not, just because it's one that a lot of people didn't have much history and context on. As a member of the Black community, we kind of grew up hearing about those things, but it's not something that you typically learn a whole lot about in U.S. history in school, or if you're not part of that community, you don't hear a whole lot about. So it was significant to actually receive that as a national holiday and even get the chance to really celebrate on a larger scale as a community. So I was really excited when it was made a national holiday.
What do you have planned? Do you have walks or events happening?
For our portion of the celebration, we've actually brought in 48 local vendors around particularly Black and BIPOC owned businesses. The theme this year was Black Wall Street, so commemorating the resiliency of Black businesses and trying to find a way to increase the visibility of our local Black owned businesses here in Salem. We do have some non-BIPOC businesses as well because we want to make sure that everyone is included. So we'll have some vendors that include those selling food items, just different items for purchase, but we also have a list of local nonprofits who are coming to the event. We have resource-based organizations who are there providing resources for community members. There is going to be free food involved, so everyone is invited to participate. We're also bringing in local artist Rich McLeod. He has been a local favorite of mine.
Oh, so yes, Rich.
Yes.
I know him well.
He will be performing. I was really excited to add that to this year's agenda.
Oh, that's terrific.
And we have space for kids. So we have courts, there's arts and crafts, there'll be goodie bags. We even brought in Salem Library to bring some Black-focused literature to share with communities. So we really wanted this to be an inclusive space for everyone. And then also kind of partnering with some local nonprofits, like Willamette Heritage Center is doing their walk, highlighting kind of some Black history around the event, and they'll be kind of passing by on their tour and their walk of our block party, which is awesome.
Where is this going to be?
Our block party is going to be located at the intersection of State and Cottage Street. Our headquarters, where we're located, is 680 Micah, so it's right there next to our building, which is where we meet on a regular basis for our general membership meetings.
Where could people learn a little bit more about this?
About our Juneteenth event, you can always check out our website, which is sknAACP1166.org. On our website, we have all of our committees, so we do our work by committees. For our members who would like to participate, you can find information on who your committee chair is, when they meet, events that we host as an organization, other partnering events that we put on with other community partners, as well as just try to, if you you want information on just how to come sit in and listen to a general membership meeting to kind of see what kind of work we do, all of that can be found on our website.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You talk about your membership. It's an eclectic group of people. Is that something that you'd like to share about?
Yeah, I think the common misnomer about the NAACP is that it's an organization that is just for Black people. And I would say that that's not true. We are a civil rights organization, so we are one of the oldest civil rights organizations in the United States. And collectively, even in the peak of the civil rights movement, this work has been done by Black individuals, but also non-Black allies who've supported the goals and the missions and the values of advancing just the civil liberties of all people, particularly people of color. So I always like to share with our community that if creating a space where all are included, that we promote social inclusion is kind of where your heart is, I encourage people to come check out a meeting. There's no kind of obligations, no no asks, but you can really learn about what our organization is doing right here in the Salem community and how we're adhering to those values of creating an environment where all people are honored and respected and supported.
You have some active initiatives that are really important to pursue, that realize the dream of the NAACP, that inclusiveness. What are some of them?
We really focus around ensuring greater social equity and social inclusion. That includes advocacy work, so advocating for anti-racist policies and dismantling racism in our communities and in our society as a whole. We have an active legal redress committee that is actually one of the only active legal redresses in the state, really centered around advocating from a litigation standpoint in those instances where that might be the best avenue to take. We do a lot of community empowerment and community engagement efforts like Juneteenth. That's just a way for us to find space for our community to connect, as well as different educational policies. So we do seminars and workshops around different aspects of policy and even policy promotion. An example, recently we participated in the Black Voter Summit at the Capitol, where we partnered with our AKA organization and Urban League to look at some of the Senate bills and House bills that were being put up for voting here that really promote the interest of our Black community and our BIPOC community. So we like to be involved in multiple areas, but with the goal of being how can we advance the civil rights of people of color.
Your work is in social work, am I right?
Yeah, I am actually an MSW student, so I am in my final year of my master's program for social work at Portland State. Social work is the heart of what I do. In fact, I'm a social worker by trade for Salem-Keizer School District, and it has been a journey to see kind of some of the values that we learn in social work, particularly around the rights of human dignity and self-actualization, and how that's impacted particularly in our current political climate. So it's been a great blessing to not just have my social work ethics in my traditional job at our Behavior Intervention Center, but also be doing social work on a macro level in my community to ensure that every member and citizen of Salem has the right to be seen, to be valued, to be appreciated, and to find a source of connection here. So that's really the heart of my work personally.
You're a local product too,
Oh,
aren't you?
yes. I'm born and raised in Salem. My family's from here. I'm a North Salem graduate. I'm a graduate of Oregon State as well. So all my roots are here in Oregon, which has been really important to me because I'm also a mother. So I have 3 little ones right here in these schools. And it's really important to me that we leave a legacy for our children that they could be proud of. So that has been something that has really spurred my work as far as a community agent of change, and even what I aspire to do later on moving forward in my career.
There's been a rollback in recent times of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And however it's called, what needs to be done according to the NAACP? Should it be changed that way? We no longer need that kind of work done, or is it needed more than ever? What are your thoughts there?
I would say in alignment with our values as far as an NAACP organization, the work of diversity, equity, inclusion is never done. no one's free unless all of us are free. And so what we see, especially now, is we're in what I would consider a politically hostile climate for certain people of color. It just highlights the need even more for organizations like the NAACP that promote a more diverse and inclusive society to not just be doing the work, but stand up and be vocal and be visible. Again, this isn't about just the civil liberties of Black people, even though we take a particular focus on that community. This extends to all BIPOC communities.
Could you define BIPOC for those who don't know?
BIPOC stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So that could include our Latino communities, that can include our Native American and Indigenous communities, of course our Black communities. These are all communities that historically have been marginalized and have experienced a significant level of oppression. And it's really important that, you know, when we're looking at the history of our American society, we say that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But historically, that has not been given to all people. And so when we're looking at what American values are, America has been a country that has been built on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Many people have contributed to the rich fabric and tapestry of American history. And it's not only important to acknowledge that, but to also maintain that, make sure that we maintain that cultural diversity, because that adds to the richness of who we are. And so to me, that work is even more relevant now than ever, as we see that there's been an intentional rollback on anything DEI related.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. You talk about children, and you're a mother.
Yes, ma'am.
3 little ones.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see for their education as they're growing up, so that they recognize themselves in what they're being taught?
Yeah, that's a great question, particularly because, you know, I work in education. I do find that though curriculum is becoming more inclusive, we have to acknowledge that history is often written from the views of the victor, meaning the ones who won. And so it's important that when, particularly even from a social work standpoint, that we have to give voice to the voiceless. We have to give opportunity for those who have not been in the role of victor to share their stories and share their perspectives. Because one of the things I like to teach my kids and even the students that I work with is that perspective is subjective. Meaning if someone was to draw a 6 right now on this floor, to me it looks like a 6. And from my perspective, that's 100% true. But for you to look at that same letter, it would be a 9. And that's 100% true for you. And so it's really important that the more voices and the more perspectives we can get to the American story, the more well-rounded our view of world history, of American history looks. And it allows us to be more receptive to those that we might not naturally share commonality with. And I think the importance of storytelling really highlights how we build bridges. We connect, we get to know people, we build relationships by communicating. And that is one of the great benefits of things like history and storytelling, is that's where our kids kind of learn not just who they are, but how they relate well with others. So for me, one of the big priorities that I want for my children is to be able to hear the stories, the lived experiences, the perceptions of those who they might not naturally share commonalities with, so that they can be more inclusive and loving people. Ultimately, I will stand in my soapbox and say that the most important thing that we can do as a community is find ways to connect and build bridges. So that really is the heart of how I try to picture all of my work, is how can I be a facilitator of connection? How can I connect to others? And how can we create more space for those who might not be given room to share their stories to share those stories?
Do you feel or sense in our community in the Mid-Willamette Valley that there are initiatives popping up that do support connecting with neighborhoods, with people that you wouldn't normally do?
Yeah, I've had a pleasure to be a part of several of those initiatives. In fact, there's a couple that come to mind, but most notably I think of the Peace Walks, which is kind of spawned and birthed out of the efforts that have been led by the Community Violence Reduction Initiative. The city of Salem, of course, had a report put out by Salem PD that talked about the increasing levels of gun violence right here in our community. Mm-hmm. And in response, we brought in in Ben McBride and the Empowerment Initiative to do kind of a consultation of what can we do as a community to address the growing need for addressing community violence. And one of those initiatives was Peace Walks, where members from all over the community come together in neighborhoods that they might not normally be in. We make a visible effort to find the beauty in these neighborhoods, to clean up, to connect with neighbors, particularly like our houseless neighbors, and just be present. And this was a way for us to promote peace, which is part of Salem Leadership Foundation's kind of bigger picture. Is they'd like for Salem to be known as the city of shalom. I've been able to be a part of several of those efforts and be even kind of an ambassador for our organization with the NAACP in contributing to that work. Is how can we break down those barriers that keep us from connecting? Because without connection, we have fear, we have just all of these things that keep us separated. And if we really want to have a safer community, it starts with getting to know and to commune with those that we live with. So I'm really proud of some of the work that we've been doing here in Salem, particularly around the CVRI initiative and the Peace Walks led by Salem Leadership Foundation. In fact, our NAACP and SLF partnered for the Peace Walk that was hosted on MLK Day. We had over 300 people show up and turn up for the event, which was one of the largest Peace Walks that we've had this year. And it was a very powerful experience to see members from all race, backgrounds, socioeconomic status just come together wanting to see a better community for Salem. And that was a significant work for me. In fact, it was probably one of the highlights of my year thus far.
What would you like to leave people with today about what it is that the NAACP Salem chapter does that might interest them, might get them going to be part of this idea of community connection?
We actually, like I said earlier, we do all of our work by committee. So we have a legal redress committee, we have an education committee, we have our youth development committee, we have our community engagement committee, we have our communications committee, and of course our finance committee. Those are several that our policing and race relations committee. We are all about finding the things that drive the heart of our community and finding ways to impact it. So right now we've done a lot of work around education. 3 of our executive committee members are also employed by Salem-Keizer. So we've done some significant work on how can we increase sense of belonging and greater social inclusion in our schools. We've done quite a bit of work around our community engagement events. Those are 2 particular areas that we really do a lot of work around, as well as our legal redress committee. But we also are open, so we tell our general members that, hey, if yours a committee that you don't see and that you have a passion to do, we have over 100 different committees that we have the ability to start according to our national chapter. Like one of them is environmental justice. So we tell our members, if there's a committee or you have a passion and a heart for any kind of work, let us know, because we want to find out the things that are relevant to our committee or our community and our members and be an impactful, positive force in that space. So I would say, I steal this quote from my good friend and our chapter president, R.J. Hampton. He reminds us that many hands make for light work. So I reach out to our members and to those who are interested and just let them know, like, if you're even remotely curious, come see what it's about. And if you have a heart to do something, let us know, because this work is driven by volunteers and those who have a passion to create better, inclusive spaces and communities for those who live here.
Once again, your website
is sknaacp1166.org.
You mentioned the Willamette Heritage Center on their walks are going to be near where you are. Mm-hmm. Well, I spoke with the curator of the Willamette Heritage Center, Kylie Pine, yesterday, and she had some wonderful thoughts on Juneteenth. Let's take a listen. On June 19th, Willamette Heritage Center is hosting its 3rd Juneteenth Community History Walk in partnership with Oregon Black pioneers, this time following in the footsteps of the Gorman family, whose story of reunification despite enslavement, cross-continental journeys, and decades of separation is nothing short of remarkable. She's really dug into our history, and this event is no exception. Welcome, Kylie. Glad to have you with us.
Hi, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
How can people participate in what I understand is free? And there are four guided tours, each one capped at 50 people.
Exactly. So on June 19th, 2025, we are hosting walks, guided walks, to explore this family history. They'll be happening at 9, 10, 11, 15, and 12:15, leaving from the Willamette Heritage Center here in Salem. It's about a 2.87-mile loop walk through downtown Salem. So it's a little bit of a stretch. If you're not interested in crowds or would like to experience the history in a little different way, we will also have maps online for access for folks that want to do it maybe virtually or in a different manner. And then the museum will also be offering the brochures on site here printed from 9 to 4 that day as well.
Tell us a little something about the Gorman family. I understand they were among the Oregon Trail's first travelers.
Indeed. Matriarch Hannah Gorman and her daughter Eliza were a part of the 1844 immigration to Oregon, which is pretty early on in the scope of when the Oregon Trail was happening. Um, Her son Hiram, and part of the you alluded it to it in the introduction. Part of the separation was because in 1844 they left Hannah's son and Eliza's brother Hiram behind. He was about 11 years old at the time, and he stayed behind in Missouri. And the story is pretty remarkable in the fact that after about 20 years, they were able to reunite again in Oregon and take very different paths along the way. Hannah and Eliza would eventually they originally settled in the Independence area in Polk County, likely with their enslaver in the 1840s and 50s, making their way then to Corvallis. And through their work, where they worked, did laundry, and Eliza was a really well-noted seamstress, were able to save up enough money to actually purchase a house. And the house still stands today and was just recently listed on the National Register of Historic Places, which is pretty remarkable in and of itself, given the background environment of being individuals of color within the territory and the country of Oregon.
And Hiram himself, his story about being able to come cross continent like that is really unusual. And it does involve Juneteenth.
Indeed. So he was living in Missouri. Missouri being a border state meant that the Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation would not have applied to Hiram nor his wife, Georgia, or their very young son at the time of its passage. Hiram, from his obituary, we know that if he didn't enlist in the army itself, he was at least attached to Union forces, working as a teamster, and saw several notable battles in Missouri. It would take an act of the Missouri State Legislature to provide freedom to him and his family. And very soon after that, we know that they traveled up to Montana, of all places.
Oh, my.
As a teamster, it's likely they'd had a lot of experience with livestock and other things, and was probably a fairly well-seasoned ranch hand by the time that they arrived in the Prickly Pear Valley just outside of Helena.
And then they lived as a family.
Somehow, some miraculous way, they were reunited. We know that Hiram never learned to read or write. He signs most of his legal documents with his mark, an X, on the documents themselves. So it's remarkable to me how they would have gotten communication back and forth, knowing that he wasn't even in Missouri at the time where Hannah had left him. It's There are some tantalizing pieces of evidence that I would love to put together in my brain as maybe clues to how they were able to figure it out. There's a newspaper notice in a Montana paper stating that there is a letter waiting at the post office for a Hiram Gorman. And it
Oh,
happens just about the time when Eliza, his sister and Hannah's daughter, dies in Oregon. So I'm wondering if that may have prompted the reunion. But how did it get there? How did they know that he was in Montana? Were they in correspondence beforehand? Did Hannah send a letter back to Missouri and somebody kindly forwarded on to where he had moved to? There's so many unknowns in this story. But the family does, Hiram's family at this point in time has his wife and then 3 children by this point when they're living in Montana, move to Salem. They arrive about 1870, 1871. And
On their
come to
own
Salem.
cross-country trip.
Yeah, from Montana to Salem in the 1870s is not a comfortable trip. And make their way to Salem. Eventually, Hiram and Eliza would purchase property in Salem, what's now Salem's Riverfront Park. Actually, if you know where the splash fountain is down there, their house was just about where that is, and that's one of the stops that we'll visit on the tour. We know that he worked at the Oregon Statesman, which is a newspaper, that he did the work of a steam engine. The paper had lost its steam engine, and the press needed some motive power, and Hiram was strong enough to be able to run that for over a decade.
Oh,
And we also know that he had a pretty green thumb, which is one of my favorite stories about him. There's multiple newspaper articles talking about things that he was growing in his garden, new varieties of potatoes, really long pea stalks. He even tried growing hemp and tobacco at one point in time, which is an interesting connection. So yeah, it's a really rich story here. And the reunion part and the wonderful part is that when Hannah was towards the end of her life in the 1880s, she actually moved in with Hiram and Eliza at a different house on a high street that we will also visit, and spent her last days there with the family.
this story gave me chills as you told me about it. I just can't imagine putting myself in their position, which we never could, because this is their story involving enslavement, so much else, and that's their story. Why is Juneteenth itself, a national holiday since 2021, is so central a part now of Salem's history?
It's definitely gained under traction as a holiday, as it was set aside as a federal holiday in 2021, but it has been celebrated across the country for many, many years. In fact, in Salem, we didn't have Juneteenth celebrations necessarily, but as early as the 1860s, 1868 is their first documented Emancipation Jubilee celebration. So individuals came together to celebrate the anniversary of the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation and all that that meant for the hopefully furtherance of the ending of slavery. But we do know that, and the reason that we celebrate Juneteenth is that the Emancipation Proclamation did not free every individual that had been enslaved. And it would take a lot more efforts legislatively through a very bloody civil war, and then to the events of in Galveston, Texas, where the general was issuing his final edict to kind of proclaim the last vestiges of chattel slavery in that area. And that's what we're celebrating with Juneteenth, which had been celebrated in Texas for many, many years. And as Mariah Rocker of Oregon Black Pioneers has stated so eloquently in her introductions for the last couple of years for us, really gained traction in Oregon, especially as a holiday, as individuals came in from the South and from Texas area, oftentimes in the post-war period, in the wartime period and post-war period, bringing these kind of traditions. And she mentions Clara Peebles, who's a pretty remarkable advocate for the holiday. She's based in Portland, but worked at a statewide level to help introduce the holiday and make sure that it was recognized in the way it is today.
And in becoming a national holiday, it was said, learn from our history. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's very important to celebrate and to understand the really, really awful things that have happened in our country in the past. Because if we don't know what's happened in the past, we don't know how to avoid it in the future.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Kylie Pine, curator of Willamette Heritage Center. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about this event?
Sure. All the information and all of the materials related to the history will be available on the events webpage, willametteheritage.org/in-freedom's footsteps.
Thank you for joining us today on InSight. I'm Wendy Brokaw.